Today, Lieutenant Governor O'Bannon will announce an historic grant that will shape the future of not just Indiana housing, but American housing, focused in 5 Indiana cities, including Gary, Indiana. Before I introduce our host today, Mayor Barnes, to introduce our featured speaker, allow me to share with you history in the making. Today, I refer to a consortium of 5 steel producers that rim our great lake, Lake Michigan. U.S. Steel Gary Works, Inland, LTV, National Midwest, and Bethlehem. These steel producers comprise the greatest steel makers in the world. And they're working in an exciting public-private partnership to promote a new market: steel-framed housing. Other members of the alliance include Dietrich, Dale Incor, and Unimast, who are some of the largest coal formers in America, and Steel Tight, Ivy Tech, which serves for our builders and carpenters, NIPSCO, the Forum, and the America ago that an initial call to U.S. led to a meeting of Mayor Barnes, Mayor Dietrich, and Mayor Pastrick, along with representatives of NIPSCO, Ivy Tech, and the Forum. And who's with us today? Dennis Hinderlong is president of the steel was provided by U.S. Steel Works, and the house was erected by Steel Tight, a coal former and panelizer, and a great supporter of the alliance. It was erected. Let's go to the future and hear about this exciting grant that will explore the use of steel and other materials beyond present applications. And to introduce Lieutenant Governor O'Bannon, it is my pleasure to introduce a great friend and our host, Mayor Barnes of the city of Gary. I would ask that the media please hold your questions until after all the presentations. Mayor Barnes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Don. Thank you very, very much. It's very obvious. You can just look and you can see that something important is happening, and we'd like for important things to happen in Gary, Indiana. I cannot help but reflect when John mentioned about a year or so ago, Mr. Mendelson and others, matter of fact, it was more than a year ago, that we began to talk about the vision of a cooperative opportunity that could make some of these things occur right here. But I tell you, the real journey that's led us here, a part of it, if you will, probably started some 90 years ago when we had the steel industry that put its roots into this community and has over a number of decades been an extremely viable, if you will, contributor to this community and to the lives of an awful lot of people. Today, as we gather here, we recognize that as an employer, our steel industry is really almost just a shadow, in a sense, of the huge employer that it was a number of years ago, when some of us were able to come home on weekends from college and to work, and there were even youngsters that were in. It's all about jobs and quality of life. There's debate that's going on in Washington, D.C. at this very moment, too. And it's about quality of life issues as well in our Congress and in the White House. And so we don't know where all these issues will finally rest. But we do know that what's happening here today is important. It's important because it deals with the issue of quality of life, because we need housing. We need housing. We need housing everywhere. It's unfortunate, but in the last 10 or 15 years, we probably built more prison accommodations than we have built living accommodations for individuals. And so we need housing, and we need ways of doing it that are going to be a lot faster, a lot more productive perhaps than things we've done in the past. And we also need jobs. I'm not talking about jobs selling peanuts or jobs that are necessarily at the Burger King, and all those are important. We need jobs that pay the kind of wages that the average family used to be able to count on in Gary, Indiana, and in other places. And we also need leaders. We need those who are in government and who are in political leadership who understand those two things, who understand it, and not just understand it, have through their record of service demonstrated that they understand it. And so I don't need to give a long dissertation on the individual that comes before you right now, except to say, for those who don't know, he served nearly 20 years as a leader in our legislature, and certainly since 1989, I think was a year after I came in office as mayor, he served as a lieutenant governor. Now, lieutenant governor in the state of Indiana is a working lieutenant governor. He's got a job, he's got a mission, he does things that affect cities like Gary, Indiana. So I'm delighted that again I have an opportunity of doing something I've done before, to introduce an individual who has been a true friend of the people of Gary and Northwest Indiana, Lieutenant Governor of the state of Indiana, Frank O'Bannon.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for inviting me up to be a part of, I think, a very, very special day. And Mayor, thank you for the introduction, and certainly thank you for the past 4 years, as I know that I've been up into Gary over 26 times in the past 6 years, and in Lake County well over 50 times, because things are happening here, and I think you've made a lot of things happen in this community, and I've been glad to be a part of it, both as Director of the Department of Commerce for the state of Indiana and also as Chairman of the Indiana Housing Finance Authority. So that really makes it special for the announcement today, because I think the future of American housing will begin here today in Gary, Indiana, and in 4 other cities here in the state. I think with what we see coming together here is what do we need in the future in housing in Indiana and all over the United States and all over the world. Now, what's happening in Indiana is something very special. Some very important turnarounds have happened in the last 3 or 4 years. Number one, the Census Bureau tells me the state of Indiana has grown at almost 4% in the last 4 years, which says for the first time in 35 years, there's more people moving into the state of Indiana than are moving out. So we're growing. Along with that, as the private sector create the jobs in the past several years, after we come through the tough 70s and 80s and what happened in the steel industry here, but as it's been revitalized and as things expand in the state of Indiana, also as more people move into Indiana, move back from Texas and California and some of the other places, also Indiana's share of the per capita personal income is growing faster than the national average, the first time since 1969. So do we need new affordable housing? Do we need additional jobs to keep us the #1 steel producing state in the United States, and particularly #1 steel producing area here in Northwest Indiana? And the answer is yes, and that means we've got to come together in partnership. And I think what we talk about today as we make this announcement is the fact that it's a partnership between business, the steel industry, labor, the steel workers, education, in this particular young people with talents and educators from Ball State, and government. Government still can do some things to hold us together. It's not evil, as some people want us to think it is. There's still basic things that we need to do. And it's housing and urban development funds that we can use, that they send to the state of Indiana. It comes through the Indiana Housing Finance Authority for us to help decide on what's the best way we can use it for the state of Indiana. So one thing we're looking at is use some of this money and focus on new affordable housing that uses steel, as we well see here right behind me. Steel structures, structural steel, steel framing. I don't know what to call them. I keep looking at them. I want to call them steel 2x4s, and I know that's not the right, not the right thing, but that's right. So we also know that what we're talking about here represents a big step in affordable housing, which is becoming a big need here, not only in the city of Gary, not only in the other metropolitan areas, but in the rural areas also. We also know it represents using the best talents that we have in the students at Ball State and the faculty at the School of Architecture there. And it also represents, I think, another approach to make sure that we have the jobs for the steel workers here in this state. And I think it also represents that we can assist our cities like Gary to help renovate neighborhoods and provide affordable housing to increase, as Mayor Barnes says, the quality of life. You know, the novelist James Baldwin said, where there is no vision, people perish. And I think you've got to have a vision, and I think what we're talking about today is a vision. There's been that basic work that's gone into it. We hope to be more innovative and creative with the bright minds of not only Ball State, but of the steel workers and the steel companies as we move forward. And I think we'll do that. So I want to congratulate everyone who has a part of it, and I'd like to announce that through the Indiana Housing Finance Authority, we are coming forward with a grant of federally programmed money of $1 million to Ball State University to work with the Steel Alliance, Northwest Indiana Forum, and the city of Gary and 4 other cities in here to work on innovative, creative, new affordable housing here in the state of Indiana. So Mayor Barnes, if you'll join me up here and let me get Dr. Eric Kelly and Dr. Stan Mendelson to come up. Mr. Kelly is Dean of the School of Architecture, and Stan works on all these problems. So let's all get a hold of this, and you all can see. Now, if I sign it, it probably won't be any good, but it's got me. But this is just to say $1 million going to the university for this purpose. So it's very, very special. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor O'Banion and Mayor Barnes. Gary, Indiana. Mayor Barnes talked about steel 90 years ago in 1996, in 1896, in 1906, I'm sorry. An industry that's running the lives of America. An industry that's 96, another visionary. Stan Mendelson, who's a fighter for new ideas, who's going to take this state-of-the-art technology to some other place. We're going to be a part of that place. We're going to be part of the future. It's part of our destiny to be part of the future of the American housing industry. We're good. You ain't seen nothing yet. So it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Mendelson, who's the director of the Housing Futures Institute. Professor Mendelson.
Thank you very much, John. I want to echo the Governor's words and your words about partnerships, and it's a great pleasure actually to see so many familiar faces from the community, Finis. I'm not going to mention all the names, from the city government, the wonderful people from the city government that we've been working with, from the departments, from the industry that we've been working with so fruitfully, and from the state government. And that sort of, I guess, before we start having visions of building houses, we've got to build trust, and I believe that we've started to build that trust, and that's the foundation of our work. What I want to do is to just quickly, as briefly as I can, identify the Housing for the Inner Cities project, what it's all about, and then later on, of course, we'll be taking questions. First of all, the Housing Futures Institute at Ball State is an applied research program that was inaugurated a few years ago in 1991 and is concerned with housing innovation and urban neighbourhood revitalisation. It is our privilege during the next 3 or 4 years to be working on housing for the Inner City Neighbourhoods project, the subject of this announcement, which is designed to collaborate with 5 cities in Indiana. Those cities, starting from the top of Indiana, are Gary, Indianapolis, Terre Haute, Columbus, and Bloomington, all representing different situations and different contexts that have imperatives for neighbourhood revitalisation. Our mission is to address the complexities affecting these cities and to achieve tangible results. We're interested in results. We're not just interested in writing books or reports. A lot of people associate that with the universities, but that's very important. But we want to see actual applied results. And already we're beginning to see some of the applied results that from a meeting we had last week. And especially housing for residents of low income to gain access to housing of their choice. That's a very important factor. Affordability also is affordable luxury of a home, and you've got to be able to have that choice, and that's what we'll look into. Throughout the nation, I just want to touch on these points. Cities are plagued with a number of critical issues affecting urban environment. Areas of blight and decay, serious problems in abandoned housing, expanding crime and vagrancy, shrinking populations, and declining community identity. This continuing litany, and I say it's continuing because it's been going on for 5 decades at least, this continuing litany of urban ills calls for dynamic and interactive strategies and visions that will enable people to help themselves through learning and communication. That's very, very important as far as we're concerned. It is our intention to arrive at the building of housing that demonstrates new and innovative ideas in traditional and non-traditional households. Not just the single-family house, although everyone knows that people want the single-family house. Here is an example of it. But other types of households that go with the lifestyle of people. And we'll talk about that perhaps a little later on. Housing that fits present-day and future lifestyles and offer new opportunities in advancing and sustainable technologies, materials and building methods. And of course steel is one of those new advancing technologies. The work of the 5 cities in both strategic and project planning of housing as part of cohesive neighbourhood design is intended to be an example for other cities and other areas and to be replicated and diversified in other places in the nation. We are focusing on many aspects of affordability of housing that not only includes the construction costs, but the importance of running costs, where energy efficiency will enable residents to economize in heating and cooling. Also included are life cycle costs, the cost of modifications and replacements during the tenure and economic life of the housing. Another specific emphasis is the cutting edge of construction technologies that will take us into the 21st century, as John has mentioned. One of the materials that we are considering, of course, and we're looking at different materials, but a very important material is the steel house. Not only because of its efficiency and precision in building, and there are many advantages to steel. There's no termites, there's no worry about fire, etc., that there are in other materials, but also because of the job opportunities that the Mayor mentioned, the job opportunities for the residents of Gary, and potential new ventures for the local region steel industry. Our expectations for this project are therefore related to the quality of life of communities, neighbourhood revitalisation of the city fabrics, and growth opportunities for the building industry. We have a number of exhibits and several handouts that are representative of the ongoing work of the cities, and we will be happy to take questions about the specifics of what we are doing a little later on. I'd also like to recognise, I know I don't have all the team here because this is not just a one-man show by any means. We are a team of very important people, faculty and students, and I'm sorry that we've got Michele Kawini here, who is the coordinator for Gary, but we have other team members that I'd also like to mention. Michele Kawini, of course, Harry Eggink, Sonny Palmer, Bob Kester, who's the head of the Energy Center, Michelle Muniar, Carol Tiernan, Dave Schoen, and Bonnie Wasilewski, who is our wonderful secretary, and the invaluable help from the graduate and senior students that are working with us. That's as far as my statement is at this moment. I think I've said enough, and I'll be pleased to take questions a little later on. Thank you.
I think one of the institutions that continues to unfold to me is Ball State, for a number of reasons. Its wellness programs are known really throughout the world. It's a great institution, and so when I learned about the Housing Futures Institute, and I learned about the College of Architecture, I wasn't surprised. I'd like to call Dr. Eric Kelly, the director, the dean of the College of Architecture, to tell us about this jewel.
It's a pleasure to be here near what we all hope will be the new home of the Bears, to be on this platform with a distinguished group of public and private officials, because that's the only way we can make things work, and to be here to represent President John Worthen of Ball State. Our primary task at Ball State, and that for which we're best known, is teaching. That's the primary job of every one of our faculty members, and every academic administrator there teaches. But we also recognize that we have a larger role in society, a role that involves conducting relevant research, of sharing that research with people who can actually use it, and of providing service to this great state of which we're a part. The College of Architecture and Planning is young for this state. We graduated our first class 25 years ago this spring, and we'll be celebrating that. It's the only one of its kind in the state. We have accredited professional programs in architecture, landscape architecture, and planning, and a master's in historic preservation. Through our community-based projects around the state of Indiana, we have helped communities to develop plans and action programs for downtown revitalization, neighborhood revitalization and stabilization, historic preservation, and individual and mass transportation. Groups of our faculty and students have brought design charrettes to communities throughout Indiana. Our housing research has included important prior work by the Housing Futures Institute, led by Professor Mendelson, on the effective use of manufactured housing and manufactured components to produce less costly, more sustainable housing. And there are some models of that over here. In separate but related efforts, our Muncie Urban Design Studio, led by Professor Tony Costello, has developed an action plan for affordable housing in Muncie in a partnership involving design efforts by our students, construction work by area vocational students, land acquisition by the city, permanent financing by a pool from local banks. The resulting Muncie Homeownership Development Center is delivering new and affordable housing in some of Muncie's most challenged neighborhoods to people with limited housing choices. Now, with the support of Delco Remy, another important private partner in the city of Anderson, we are replicating that project in Anderson. The project announced today builds on the strength of our past performance, but it has the potential to do much more. Like our other work, it is ultimately geared to action, building houses, not databases. Because of the scope of this project, we will have the opportunity to consider carefully issues of building technology. And I ask you to think about that for a minute. It's remarkable that we as a society are still asking families who drive cars that have evolved dramatically in the last 25 years, some of whom use communication devices that you can put in your pocket that didn't exist 10 years ago, to live in houses based on 19th century designs and 19th century technology. It is disturbing that this technology has become relatively more expensive over a period of time when the cost of things like home appliances and electronics have actually declined in cost when adjusted for inflation. Can we do better? Absolutely. Will it be easy? No. The success of this effort will require the support and participation of the 5 cities involved in this project, the steel industry and others interested in housing technology, of the plethora of agencies that regulate housing and often limit the use of creativity and new technology, of financial institutions, and last but not least, of the people of the community. If there is one thing that we have learned from our previous work, it is that simply building buildings misses the point. We have to help build communities, one neighborhood at a time. We're absolutely delighted to be part of this exciting project. We look forward to working with the Indiana Housing Finance Authority, with Lieutenant Governor Frank O'Bannon, with the steel industry and other manufacturing groups, with the cities of Gary, Bloomington, Columbus, Indianapolis, and Terre Haute, but most important, with the people who make these communities as well as cities.
Focused, customer-friendly, fast, high-flex. Am I talking about the computer industry? Am I talking about a high-tech industry? You bet. As high-tech as Disney. And to represent the steel industry and the Steel Alliance, the 5 steel producers, it is my pleasure to call on John Goodish, the plant manager of U.S. Steel Works. John.
Thanks, John. I think we need to understand that the future of American housing is being invented today here in Gary. One of the unique features of the program that's set out by the Housing's Futures Institute is not only are we using a new building material in steel, but we're also advocating new products such as styrofoam in the application and modern building techniques. So it's not just steel framing that we're talking about. For me, representing the American steel industry, it's exciting because for the first time in years, we have a new product line that's available out in the marketplace that will help our industry grow and gives us a more stable base. The light gauge steel framing is an alternative to wood. It has some cost advantages to it. It allows us to better palletize the product. Generally, we'll have lower building costs. I think we need to understand that it is a recyclable product. We can take it back into our operations, remelt it, roll it, reform it, and build new houses with it. Happens every day. We talked a little bit about some of the things. It's not susceptible to damage by the environment or rodents or infestation. Some of the houses down in the Florida area that withstood the hurricanes had some steel framing in them at the time. So it's a new product line. The housing that is being built or being advocated by the Housing's Futures Institute is unique as well in using the steel product and new technologies in that it adapts the house to the community where it's being built in, to fit the needs of the community. Not bringing a strange structure in and saying this is the housing design that you should use. It evaluates the community and designs a home that fits the community's needs. We have a changing American lifestyle. We have single parents today out there. We have an older America coming about. Their housing needs and what they require into the future is different from what we needed 30 years ago. The Housing Futures Institute helps develop a house to adapt to the needs of those individuals. The steel-framed house that we have here today, what you see here actually is only a portion of the house. There's about 1,100 square feet here. The house that you'll see go up down on 35th and Martin Luther King is being donated to Ivy Tech. Will be some 2,200 square feet. It will be used as a daycare center. Down there, we're donating the steel. Steel Tight and other suppliers have been involved in fabricating and putting it together. So the steel frame house is state-of-the-art technology. We believe that Professor Mendelson and the Housing Futures Institute have selected the right primary product to build the houses from. It allows us to have a win-win for everyone in the community. It allows the steel industry to win. It's a new product that's coming out onto the market. Provides future jobs for steel workers. Provides future jobs for the construction industry, for the building trades. We can improve the quality of housing, a steel-framed house, together with a lot of the technology that's being advocated. And it lets us utilize our inner-city neighborhoods in Gary. It's a project coming to Gary, being funded by the federal government with the support of the state, that will help Gary grow and become a revitalized community. Thank you.